Jessica Alderson. I'm the new UK Ambassador for Women in Tech, and welcome to our UK Relaunch event. The theme today is why we need more women in tech. So we'll start with a brief overview of the Women in Tech organisation. We'll then have a keynote speech by Dr. Yvonne Thompson, CBE, and then we'll be joined by three very special guests for a panel discussion. So Women in Tech is a global non-profit organisation, and our vision is to empower 5 million women in STEM by 2030. This is a short video to explain a bit more about Women in Tech.
Women are tech's most untapped resource. Not only is creating diverse teams ethical and will drive more economic growth, but future-proofing the job opportunities of women will ensure sustainable communities worldwide. Women in Tech is committed to actively promoting girls' and women's empowerment in STEM. We are present in 6 continents with thousands of members. Our power as a global movement is demonstrated by working magic every day. We create impact through action to build skills and confidence, setting women up for success. Our mission is to empower 5 million women and girls by 2030. Because when women rise, we all rise.
So hopefully that gave you a good overview as to what Women in Tech does on a more global level. And then more locally, this is our new UK Women in Tech team. And we have lots of exciting plans. We'll be organising events at schools, universities, women's pitching events. We are creating a mentorship programme, building a community. We'll be sharing posts on social media, and also we're keen to partner with companies that share similar values. So yeah, now I'm excited to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Dr. Yvonne Thompson, CBE. Dr. Yvonne Thompson is a business leader, a founder, an author, an international speaker, amongst many other things. So yeah, I'll pass it over.
It gives me great pleasure to join you in supporting the Women in Tech mission to empower 5 million women into the tech arena globally by 2030, while supporting 5 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I'm Dr. Yvonne Thompson, CBE, and I'm humbled to be sitting around the table at this Women in Tech conference with giants who've led the way to break down one of the last male bastions left standing, the world of technology. Ayami Moore Okai, founder and CEO of Women in Tech and Social Brain, Francois Meunier, former head of tech research at Morgan Stanley, and Jenny Burton, commercial director at Piracle. The aim of this event is to educate, equip, and empower women and girls with the necessary skills and confidence to succeed in STEM career fields. I believe we need to ignite that passion for tech as early as nursery. It should become an everyday part of our conversation, everyday part of our vocabulary, especially with girls. And by the time we get to senior education, it's far too late. We've already embedded that imposter syndrome that says, no, you can't, I'm not good enough, or I don't want to. Well, I say, yes, you can, you are good enough. And if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? We're still led to believe that tech is a man's world. PwC carried out some research that showed only 3% of the female respondents said a career in technology is their first choice. I believe this comes from the lack of knowledge of benefits and the lack of knowledge of opportunities. 78% of those students can't name a famous female working in technology. This shows the lack of role models, real, or what I call real models. Only 16% of females have had the career in technology suggested to them, whilst this figure shoots up to 33% when it gets to males. And there's still only 5% leadership positions that's occupied by females in the world of technology. For me, to change this picture, we need to apply what I call my 3 ADs, 3 ADs. Access to female role models. You can't be what you can't see. Access to the right education at the right time. It's never too late or it's never too early to learn. Access to opportunities. Far too many of us are locked out of this male bastion, whether you think it's perceived or otherwise. We also now have to look at the 3 Ds, digital, data, and most of all, diversity. With AI becoming more and more integral, influential, and integrated into our everyday lives, women have to ask themselves, am I AI? Am I? Am I part of this wave of technology that will come and move forward with or without us? Technology is not a moment in time, it's a movement, it's a life-changing movement. Am I prepared to be part of the change I want to see in order to change the biases previously shown in the early days of search engines? Google, when asked to find pictures of a fighter pilot, a man's picture comes up. When asked to find a picture of a surgeon, a man's picture came up. Or when asked to find Black people, it came up with cartoon images blacked out. Or when asked to find beautiful babies, it only shows white babies for the first 20 scrolls, the first 20 pages. This all has to change. We need not only gender diversity, but we also need the intersectionality of race, abilities, neurodiversity, and other strands of diversity. Together, we're stronger. A McKinsey report showed with a balanced representation with gender diversity, companies have a 15% advantage on their competitors. With the intersectionality of race, this goes up to 35%. Diversity of thought, diversity of creativity, and culture add is good for the bottom line. Companies can make that change if there's a will. They need to start by getting comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations. They need to have one-to-one difficult dialogues. They need to find out more about their staff, who they are and what they can do. They need to have diversity at the heart of their company recruitment policy and stop recruiting from the male white bastions of the red brick universities. How can they make that change when they need to face the future and the future of the tech world globally? And when I say globally, I mean race globally. Think about it. Think hard about it and don't be bitter, be better. In closing, I'd like to thank Jessica Anderson and her team for putting together an amazing lineup of speakers for this conference, which I'm sure will add to the Women in Tech ambitious but achievable target of 5 million women in tech by 2030. What I will leave you with is a wish. My wish is that you may always be curious enough to learn something new and amazing every single day. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah, so now it's time for our panel discussion. And with us today, we have Ayumi Moore Aoki, who is the CEO and founder of Women in Tech and Social Brain. We have Francois Mernier, who was the former head of tech research at Morgan Stanley and a former tech portfolio manager at Lombard Odier. And we had Jenny Burton, who is commercial director at Piracle. So yeah, welcome. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So yeah, the theme of today's panel discussion is why there should be more women in tech. So yeah, let's start with the kind of bigger picture question. Why do you think there are so few women in tech to start with? Ayumi, do you want to start with this one?
Oh, gee. There are so many reasons, I think if you were able to pinpoint one single reason why there are so many few women in tech, it would be easy to solve the problem, because we could say, okay, the problem comes from here. There's a pipeline problem that comes in education at that age, and then we put all our efforts in there and then it's solved. But it's not as simple as that, because ever since 1984, the gender gap in technology has been getting wider and wider. So for the last, 30 years, we've been losing women in technology. So I think it comes from different barriers that we can have. Some are conscious, some are unconscious. And those are unconscious, they're the harder ones to tackle and to try and solve the problem. So I think it comes from, as I said, culture, different cultures, what we brought up with, believing, the role models we have, the movies we watch where, we always have the tech people or the developer being the guy. I think there's so many different things that are coming together that's difficult to pinpoint one pain area.
Yeah, Francois, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, my experience is basically like when I was at school and university, when I was in engineering school, basically it was 90% guys, and it was like that, and I'm hopeful this will change. I'm trying to motivate my two daughters to go to engineering school and do more maths and physics, but I don't know why they are not interested. So don't know what to do actually.
Yeah, I think there's definitely more work for everyone to do, really, for sure. And yeah, Jenny, what do you think?
Yes, I totally agree. I think that we definitely have something going on at school and education level where women don't choose the same sort of STEM subjects that men do. But I also think tech has got perhaps a bit of a branding problem. I think it can come across as a bit of a kind of exclusive club, a bit of a clique. And actually, we've got a bit of work to do to be a bit more welcoming. I come from a background where I didn't study technical subjects. I did a languages degree and then found my way into tech. And I think it's important to remember that there are plenty of roles you can do within tech that aren't just coding and programming. Those things are super important and we need to get more women doing those things. But there's a lot you can do within the tech industry that isn't that's product or marketing or sales, whatever it might be. So I think a bit of a branding shift around the tech industry might help as well.
Yeah, I think that is a really good point. And I guess back to what you said at the beginning, Ayumi, it's not one reason, right? There's so many different things. Yeah, if there was one reason, it would be easier to solve.
And also it changes according to the parts of the world. I think in Europe and in the Americas as well, or even South America, we do have a problem right from the beginning, right from the pipeline, where really the girls, they don't go into STEM subjects at school. And this I even have found with my children. I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. And the 2 oldest, so my boy, he went to engineering school, and he's always been good in maths. And my daughter, 3 years younger, she's as smart as him, and she didn't know what to do. So I said, no, why don't you go to the same as Thomas? Why don't you go into more into maths and science, so you can have more opportunities afterwards? You can try and have something bigger, larger. And she said to me, I'm not sure it's good for me, because my teacher told me that because I was smart, I should do law school. So you see, because they don't, at that age, at 14 or 15, they kind of a bit lost. They don't know what path to take. So they are a lot of influences from the parents and also from the teachers, of course. So if the teachers, they say, if you're smart, you should do this, and otherwise you do that, it really, shapes the way and the direction they're going to be taking. But that's more in Europe, I'd say, because in the Middle East and also in India, I have noticed that they have no problem in having women in STEM in education. Their problem comes later on, getting them to the workforce. So in the education, they almost have not completely 50-50, but maybe 46. They've got a very high rate of women going into STEM areas. Education once again, but then once they finish studying, then they stay at home. Then they take care of the family, they take care of other things, or they don't choose to go into the workforce. So at the end of the day, the result is the same, right? We don't have the women working in the workforce, but the reasons are different.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. women in tech is very global, right? And you see how lots of different countries are doing in terms of diversity in tech. And I was going to ask, yeah, which kind of countries do you think are leading the way? So Middle East and India in terms of education, but that doesn't necessarily translate into more women working in tech eventually.
Even Eastern Europe as well. If you go to more the Eastern Europe countries, they also have a higher level of, you know, of graduates, I would say. But and perhaps a little bit more in Eastern Europe as well. They're entering the workforce, but I would say in India or in the Middle East, not Middle East as a whole. I would say the ones that I know of mostly is the UAE. So I don't want to, you know, put it all in one pack. What I have noticed is that in the UAE, so lots of brilliant women getting, you know, doctor's degrees and everything, in technology and in engineering, science, but then they don't go into the workforce. That's and India, maybe a little bit less. That means they've got also lots of very high rate of students, but then also goes down to really dropping once they enter the workforce. So there are also different reasons, I think. Comes obviously from the family, from the culture, but also from things like, you know, childcare. This is what I found in Australia. Lots of ladies who say, you know, when we went to childcare, because there was no support or very little support, you know, from the government, or because they don't have, you know, that much of pay. So they have to choose one parent that has to sacrifice a couple of months to be able to take care of the child. So generally that's the role, especially for the newborn, for the mother. And so when you're out of in that period of your life, in your career, you step out of the work, then you really lose a lot of momentum afterwards to getting back in there.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Yeah, and then it's great today because we've got lots of different, I guess, viewpoints. And Francois, so with your two previous roles, you must have met a lot of management teams of publicly listed tech companies. I was wondering, did you meet many females in management roles? And if so, what kind of roles were they?
Yeah, actually, there were quite a few. So there was the CEO of IBM, Ginny, but she's gone. There was the CEO of Yahoo, Marissa Mayer, but she's gone. The CEO of HPE, Meg Whitman, and she's gone as well. So there are not that many left at the CEO level. So basically, the only two or three which are left is basically the CEO of Oracle, the CEO of AMD, Lisa Su, which, you know, I've had incredible discussions with her. And there is also your competitor, the CEO of Bumble, which has been listed very recently. So it's more at the CFO role at the moment. The CFO of NVIDIA, Colette. Crest, she's a rock star, you know, like it's semiconductor, it's very difficult, goes ups and downs, so she's amazing. CEO of Etsy as well, Rachel Glazer, amazing CFO, very visionary. CFO of Google, we know her because she was the CFO of Morgan Stanley before, and of course the CFO of Microsoft. So not that many at the CEO level, more at the CFO level, and I'm afraid at the CTO level, in big tech companies, there is not a single one. That's really an issue. And then, you know, when you discuss with board members about those issues, because, you know, like typically when you're a portfolio manager and you run an ESG fund, you have some diversity discussions to have. And then the board guys says, we can't find one. Because they don't want to. So it's a bit like, because of goes back to the score issue. So actually at the end of the day, you know, like it's a bit scary because I can name them all and I can count them on my fingers. And it's a bit, it's a big issue.
Yeah, no, I think it is. Yeah, a really big issue. And yeah, I mean, I'm, I guess, relatively new to the tech industry in the big scheme of things. And I'm yet to meet a female CTO of a startup. You know, I've met quite a lot of startups now, but no female CTOs, which, you know, I've kind of read about some, did some Googling, but none kind of, you know, naturally and organically. So yeah, it's definitely a huge issue, really. Yeah, and then I guess like a really important question, Jenny, let's start with you. What do you think that individuals and companies should be doing to essentially increase diversity in tech?
Yeah, I think this is completely fundamental. I totally agree with Francois. We sort of know the names of these people because there are so few of them. I read a stat that was there are only 11% of executive roles in Silicon Valley are filled by women. So it's hugely disproportional across the tech industry. So it's completely fundamental that we do something about it. Coming from Empirical, I would say that the place to start is data. I think that it's not the same in every organization where the problem is coming from. For some organizations, it might be that they are recruiting more men than women. For other organizations, it might be that they are really good at recruiting women, but that they don't keep hold of them and that they leave. So I would start with looking at the data of the organization and what's happening. And I know some companies find it really helpful to set targets or goals. I know can be a bit of a controversial one, but it can be really helpful to sort of have some accountability around it, at least to kind of get things going in the right direction. And then there's all of the softer things like mentorship schemes and doing cross-organization mentorship schemes and reverse mentoring and having inclusion groups in the organization and things like that. So I think I'd start with the data, but then make sure you cover the other side as well to make sure that women feel included, as well as just kind of getting them through the door.
Yeah, that's interesting what you said about retention rates, because I think they're very, very different for women in tech compared to men in tech. And yes, that's like the added challenge of first, kind of, I guess, getting more women into tech, and then the second kind of step of that is keeping them, right? Naomi, what do you think individuals and companies should be doing to increase diversity in tech?
Well, there are lots of things to do. I would say, as mentioned before, also mentorship, it's important. It's important because I think also in a very high level, so executives, so the CTOs are generally mostly men, they should take with them, have a female CTO mentee so that they can really show the way and then, be able to empower them. I think there should be also lots of outreach sessions that must be done also at school level, so that students know what the roles are, in companies for tech. I think tech is something that is reinventing itself so quickly that we don't even know what the jobs of tomorrow are. I think half of them, we don't know what the jobs are going to be in 5 or 10 years. So maybe it's different. It's difficult also for the young girls to be able to imagine themselves and project themselves in a field or in a job that doesn't even exist yet. So I think for them to go and see that's all about creativity, innovation, because without trying to be stereotyping, girls, they tend to prefer to say that they're more attracted by creative things, in that age. So saying that technology can be creative, and that's why we need women and diversity altogether, because we need creativity and innovation technology. So I think it's a way to encourage them to come, show them the opportunities that there are, put them with a mentor already in that high level in a company, and do different things like this. So I think it comes from having more role models, having more mentors, be able to embrace and teach the new generation, and also be able to propose in-house upskilling and reskilling, because perhaps you can come in, you didn't have a tech background at all, but you can turn into tech at any age. I learned how to code when I was 30, I changed completely. So I think you also be supporting and encouraging women to be able to reskill and change along the way inside a company. That's very important as well.
Yeah, I think mentorship is massively important to everyone, but even more so for minority groups who potentially don't have the same opportunities. Like to have that kind of guidance can be just really, really helpful. And Francois, what do you think people and companies should be doing?
It's really about not being scared. And I think this is the thing, like you go into a meeting, in tech companies, and you have loads of guys, and don't be scared. And even if there is a bit of a mansplaining or that type of things, don't be scared. That's also what I keep on telling to my daughters as well. because great ideas come from diverse background and diverse ideas. So I think this is the thing, and I think there is more protection as well from investors today than there was before. So companies need to have a better ESG rankings and everything, and there is a higher likelihood that those ideas will be heard.
Yeah, and I think Amy, the point that you made about creativity is a really great one as well. So I think sometimes tech is portrayed as like not particularly creative, I guess, but actually it can be massively creative. Like, the ways that you solve coding problems and things like that does actually require a lot of creativity. So to highlight that that's a major part of it, I think could be really, really great. So Jenny, in your role, you do quite a lot around kind of bias in interviews, right? What kind of biases do you see in terms of minorities, really?
Yeah, this is a big part of what we do, and it's trying to look at the way that an organization recruits people, and then correlate that with success in the company and make sure that they're making the right decisions, but doing that through a diversity lens, as it were. So really trying to understand it. The results are obviously fascinating, certainly when you're looking at sort of graduate recruitment. So you've got people going through sort of 10 stages of a process and making sure that you're looking at the right test for success in the firm. Success in the firm could be anything that the firm chooses, whether that's tenure or performance scores or profitability, whatever it might be. But one of the things that we discovered when it came to gender and differences in gender is that where firms are looking to hire someone really urgently, those roles are more often than not filled by men. And there's a few sort of reasons or theories as to why that is. It might be because it's easier to persuade a man to move job. So if you're looking for someone to come into the company really, really quickly, it's easier to persuade a man. And there's a bit around, maybe it's to do with the way that the recruitment agency model works, that they're incentivized to send you, their short list of candidates really quickly. And so the great thing is that if you discover that, you can then look to do things about it. So that was something we found, was that where an organization put out a requirement and they need someone yesterday, those roles more often not were filled by men. So lots and lots of different things that you can find when you look at it.
Yeah. Do you know any studies, or have Purple done any studies about like the interviews themselves, and I guess that whole process and maybe what questions are asked, that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of evidence around making sure you have a woman on the panel to appear more inviting to women. If a woman is interviewed by a panel of 5 men, that can be very off-putting, things like that. We have a lot of fun looking at every individual interviewer and looking at how successful they are at interviewing. So sort of their yeses and nos versus the performance of the person in the company a few years later. Yeah. And in terms of gender, we've not found so much there. What we tend to find is that the more senior someone is, the less likely they are to predict success in the firm than more junior people. Lots of theories as to why that might be. But it's looking at the individual level can really help the company then understand if there's something specific to look at.
Okay, yeah, that's so interesting. I guess maybe they're more removed from that specific role and the kind of skills that role requires, the more senior people.
I think certainly when you're looking at things like grad schemes, that's definitely true, because it's a longer time since they went through it themselves. Yeah. And obviously the world might have changed a little bit since they did, but yeah.
Yeah, so I've looked at quite a few studies around like fundraising and the kind of unconscious biases there. And one of the studies showed that in fundraising meetings, men 2/3 of the time are asked promotion-oriented questions about like how they're going to win, how they're going to grow, how they're going to do, all these big exciting things. But then 2/3 of the time, women are asked prevention-oriented questions about, what if this person or what if this company does it better, or like what about security, and have you thought about this and that? And like that's a massive difference, That's like not a kind of 5-10% difference. That's huge. I think that just shows how big these unconscious biases can be, really.
Yeah, and you see that at the application level. If the job application says you need experience coding Python, for example, you often find that a woman who has done a bit of Python but doesn't know it very well will think, oh, I've not got that skill set. But a man who's tinkered around with Python would be more likely to apply for the job. We see a lot of that. So yeah, we've got to say at the beginning, I was saying about branding. I think that's one of the things we've got to send a message that we're more inclusive than that. And encourage women to apply for these jobs.
Yeah, that's very true. And yeah, next question, why is diversity in STEM so important? Francois, do you want to go first with this one?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's super important by construction, because tech is going into every sector. It's just doing a massive verticalization. Tech will be everywhere. There is a massive pervasion, so if every company tomorrow is a tech company, it will be 100% male, and it's very scary. So it's not like the tech thing of the 80s of, geek type thing sitting in a corner, healthcare is becoming tech, consumer products are becoming tech, law is becoming tech, finance is becoming tech. So it needs more diversity by construction. So that's why it's essential. So if tech is just like a 90% male from the beginning, then things are going to worsen in the next 10, 15, 20 years, and it's completely scary.
Yeah, no, that is very true. And yeah, Yumi, what are your thoughts on this?
I think we definitely, I think today we can't say, it's something, are you tech or you're not tech? I think tech is behind every single industry today, and it's just going to completely augment, in time. I think the future of work and all the high paid jobs and all the possibilities and innovation, there is tech. Sorry, my son was coming inside. That's why I was a little bit, he was asking me to go have breakfast. And so I was a bit lost. Exactly. So, and just coming back to what Jenny said, sorry, for the hiring, it is so true, I was in a conference with one of the directors of LinkedIn, and he was saying that there was a study also on LinkedIn, but there are also many different studies that would say that, when you have like a job description, and if you have a guy, as long as he has 50% of the qualifications, he thinks, gee, I am the perfect person for this job. This job is for me. The woman, she has to have 100% of all the qualifications for her to be able to apply, because we grow up learning that girls should be perfect and boys should be brave. So they think, I'm brave, I'm going to go for it. And it's also in the mindset. So going back to this unconscious bias and the way we brought up, it's very difficult to change. And just to give an example, so we've got a new UK ambassador. And a couple of weeks ago, someone reached out for me on LinkedIn, a man, and he said, I want to be your UK ambassador for women in tech. So I said, well, thank you. That's very kind, but we already have one. So she says, do you have a chairman? I want to be the chairman of the board. So instead of not one woman, ever in 3 years has asked me this guy, who I think is very, it's very courageous, but it's difficult. So the man, he wants to be on the top, and if you can't be on the top, he wants the chef, the boss of the top. And the woman says, okay, great, I would love to be part of the team then. So that's the mindset's also different.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I had an interesting.
So you could have had a chairman above you.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think, that is such an interesting point. Like, I had a really interesting meeting with someone earlier this week, and he approached me and essentially wants to be part of the company, even though, we weren't recruiting for that specific role, but he was like, I want to be part of this. I want to be in this role, and this is why you should have this role. And, this is why you should choose me to do this. And I was just thinking, like, women, I think, are so much less likely to do that, to kind of just go out there and say, like kind of you were just saying, like, create this role because I'd be great at it type
Because I
thing.
deserve it. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And also we also have also different ways to answering. So because we want like the CVs and the motivational letter to be perfect, the women tend to wait most of it until the very last minute, the last day of the dates to apply to a grant or to a job application, while men, they just do it right away. So also the recruiters, they tend to go, especially if they want, if they want to recruit quickly, as soon as they receive the application forms, they start studying them, and basically mostly by the end of the trial period of the announcement, they've already made a choice. So all the CVs and the good CVs of the women, they come at the end, they're not even looked at, or just very little, very briefly, because the decision's already been made. They've already started doing the interviews and stuff like that. So there's also maybe a procedure to respect in order to make it really equal. So start looking at the CVs only once the deadline is over. Starting making the interviews only after. Obviously, it does make the time lapse much wider, but maybe these are the ways, because we do have different ways of functioning, according to gender.
Yeah. So women probably spend longer kind of perfecting their application and then kind of end up submitting it later on. Yeah. That's really interesting as well. And Jenny, why do you think that diversity in STEM is so important?
I think it is completely and totally fundamental. I sort of see two sides to this. So the one side is that it's been proven that more diverse companies are more profitable. Thankfully, McKinsey has done the hard work for us. You can go see all of their reports about this. I think the stat is that the top quartile of diverse boards are 25% more likely to be profitable than below. So there's kind of the business case has been done for us, which is great news. But I think there's also the other side of it, which is that things go wrong if you don't have a diverse company and you don't have a diverse tech team. And there are so many examples of where companies have done things that have been embarrassing or unethical as a result of not having diverse people building their products. And especially when women are some of the biggest consumers of these tech products and the software and downloading these things, it can get pretty embarrassing reputationally for an organization to get things wrong. I mean, examples of the first fitness trackers that didn't track periods, for example. You had on the ethnicity side, the first sort of soap dispensers that didn't work with dark skin. These things are downright unethical when things like that happen. And so companies not only should see the business case that's great, that they'll do better as a company by having more women in these tech roles, but also they'd be more likely to avoid a disaster and avoid doing something really silly, because through no fault of their own, if it's all one demographic building the product, they're not going to think about other demographics that might use it. So I think it's pretty persuasive, the arguments for needing diverse companies. And then on top of that, I think you hear anecdotally all the time, people prefer to work in an inclusive environment. They're happier at work, and if they're happier at work, they're more productive at work. So yeah, I think the reasons are pretty compelling.
Yeah. So do you think that's why more diverse companies tend to perform better, because just the kind of overall culture is more inclusive and people are happier and more productive and probably retained for longer, that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot to it, and I really recommend reading the McKinsey study on it from last year. It's called Diversity Matters. But absolutely, that is the kind of anecdotal part of it, is that people say they much prefer a diverse environment. They feel more included. But also you have things like increased retention rates. If your minority groups feel more welcome at work, they'll stay longer. They stay longer, you'll get more out of them. They'll achieve more and they'll become more senior. So yeah, definitely, I think that plays a big part.
Yeah. Yeah, and Amy, it's been now over 3 years since you founded Women in Tech. And yeah, having joined myself recently, I'm amazed to see all the things that are happening, all around the world. Like the first town hall that I went to, I was like, wow, there's just so much happening. And it's really just, I guess, incredible what you've created, and also the community, like everyone's just so supportive. Have you seen like much change in that time? I guess you've seen a lot of change in terms of women in tech itself, but like, I guess broader in terms of the industry.
I must say there is a lot more awareness, because we talk a lot about it, lots of topic discussions, but the numbers themselves, they're not changing. For many reasons, also because, if we've been doing this for like 30 years, to have the figures, to have the time and have the stats afterwards, it will take some time. But also there was pandemic in 2020. So that really changed everything. I think we were going in the right direction. And with this world crisis that came onto everybody everywhere in the world, I think, the women were really, really, well, everyone was hit hard, but especially women, because we were homeschooling, because we were, working from home and taking care of the children. And there have been lots of different studies that show that all the progress that we had done in gender parity altogether, not only tech, but in gender parity, we have, lost maybe, 10, 20, 30 years of advancement. So I think we hopefully will be able to get back and learn from this also, because we found new ways. We found that remote work can work. That is the future of work as well. So it will also give more flexibility for women in the future. I think men also learn that they have a very prominent role in parenting, in taking care of the household as well. So I think this also showed that they're also very important in that. So it's going to be making it lighter for women and making perhaps the family dynamics a bit more equal, because the family dynamics, everything that results in what the work reflects. So hopefully it will be better in a few years, and we're working for it. But it wasn't it hasn't been a very easy year. And also what we have found, especially in the underprivileged communities, is that obviously there's a gender divide, but the digital divide is much greater as well. So when, for instance, for very poor, underprivileged families, if they have only, for instance, one iPhone, but mobile phone, it will be mostly the father or the son that will have the not the preference, but they will first make use of it. So the girls, they'll be the last. So when you're homeschooling, it's very, very difficult to keep track, and this is what we have found.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think family dynamics definitely does play a huge role in that. Do you think, I guess, if, companies and individuals do really all just start doing the right kind of things, do you think change could happen quite quickly, or do you think it will always be quite a slow process?
Of course. No, we have to think that. Otherwise,
yeah.
we wouldn't be doing all of this. I think it can come quickly. No, quickly, perhaps I'm being naive, but we have set out, our goal is to empower 5 million women and girls by 2030. So we give us a decade to really make change. So I really believe in it, because if we don't, then, but I think we have to speed it up, and I have to find different ways. And I think we all have to work together and make more synergies, as you said, between academia, between, corporate, nonprofits, governments. Everyone has to everyone has to think that they must move the needle, because one individual can really do beautiful things, but really working together, the change, can be much quicker. I think this is what we have to strive for. Otherwise, we have to wait until
many decades. Yeah. Okay.
But the awareness is there. I think we created lots of awareness, so now we just have to make it real, right? Because it's good to talk about it, but then to make the change and to act upon it, it's something different. We have to walk the talk.
Yes, no, that's exactly it. And I think, talking about it and raising awareness is definitely the first step, because if people don't know that it's an issue, then, they're even less likely to do something about it. But it's so true. Then actually to do all these things is the kind of next, probably more important part, really. And Francois, so you've worked in tech for quite a while. Have you seen changes over that time period?
I would say I agree with Ayumi. There is much more awareness. I would say in the past 5 years, 5 years, before it was not even a subject. There is more in ESG as well, more rankings, diversity measures. So at least you can see where the problem is. I can't see any progress. That's the problem, especially at the top in large companies. As I said, the number of large listed tech companies with a female CEO has actually has actually shrunk, and it's even worse. I think, like off the record discussions with shareholders is around making those women responsible for the failure of those companies, because they were, female CEOs, while the companies were actually just badly positioned structurally, and it would have been actually impossible to turn them around anyway. So it's totally unfair. So I would say there is a bit of progress in big tech, maybe with Google, Microsoft, Nvidia, AMD. It's also maybe a bit better in banks than in tech companies. Citigroup is actually the first mega bank to have a female CEO. But you see, again, it's the one example. And where I would like to conclude is really on my vision for the future, which is we are not in the industrial revolution anymore. It's not men and machines and cars anymore. All of this will be gone. We are in the digitalization era. And digitalization is made of one and zeros. It's not about gender. So hopefully, I hope we don't have this conversation at all in 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 10 years, that would be nice, if, female CEO, there's not kind of one, that it's actually just pretty normal, really.
I think that's, dare I say, a bit optimistic. I mean, I definitely agree that the awareness is there and we're moving in the right direction, but the stats say that if we keep going at the current rate, it'll take another 30 years till we get to gender parity at executive level. 30 years, I mean, that's a long time, considering this has been a conversation for the last 5. So it's frustrating, but it does take a while. And especially when you're talking about technical roles, because it takes time to train people and to get them kind of through their careers to those senior roles. And there are some amazing organizations doing it. Certainly in the UK, you've got Code First Girls and Girls Can Code and Future Girl Core and lots of these amazing organizations that are supporting more women to get into tech. But I do feel a bit pessimistic that it's a long journey, and I think we have to push companies to hurry up and to take it more seriously now, because, as you say, Francois, everything is tech, and we're going to have these products that aren't fit for purpose if we don't have more diverse teams sooner rather than later.
Yeah, hopefully more of these events and lots of people watching them will help. Exactly. Yeah. So, thank you so much for your time. Really interesting to have all these different points of views. Really appreciate it. Thank you.